Today's tea is Earl Grey, and welcome to Tea and Torture.
Sounds like a fucking infomercial. I can't.
A what?
An infomercial.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, this episode, who are we talking about?
H.H. Homie.
Yeah.
Holmes, I mean, but he's my homie. Not really.
Do you think his friends called him that?
Probably. He seemed like a pal. What friends?
Yeah.
You mean
What
Ben
friends?
Pitzel?
The Pitzel. The Pitzels. The pretzel.
Pretzels. Ooh, pretzels are so good. I die for pretzels. They're great. I shouldn't make dead jokes when we're talking about a serial killer.
That's funny, though.
I need sleep. This isn't okay. Okay, anywho, we're talking about H.H. Holmes,
So it'd probably be important to give his real name.
which was Herman Mudgett?
Herman Webster Mudgett.
Yeah, Herman Webster Mudgett. And he switched his name after he graduated, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, because he got married to Clara A. Lovering. I don't know if that's how you say her last name. When he was 19, and at 21 they had a son, and I'm pretty sure after that is when he changed his name to Howard. I think Howard Herbert Holmes. I can't remember the middle name.
Henry Howard Holmes. And it was after he was he graduated from the Michigan Medical School College thing in 1884.
Because that was super impressive.
He studied chemistry and anatomy. You know, that's kind of how he got into the whole I'm gonna kill people and
Yeah, because he knew how to dispose of the bodies.
Yeah,
and in a funny way.
Yeah, and it's so funny because he donated the skeletons of like real people that he killed to the medical school, so they used them for like the anatomy classes and
stuff
the
like
sciences
that.
of that, which was really ironic and kind of funny. Not
Do you remember why he? Not why he did it, but something that drove him to doing that was when he was bullied.
Yeah, he was really.
And then they made him like stand in front of a skeleton.
Yeah.
Because he was terrified of doctors, and so them being bullies.
Yeah.
Scared him. But
yeah, so they took him to like a skeleton, and.
But then afterwards he said, he got over it, and he kind of
was fascinated. He was intrigued by the skeleton.
Death occurred.
Yeah.
Later on.
And then at medical school, he worked on cadavers during the whole anatomy thing, and he realized he loved blood. It's boy,
having some troubles.
My tongue is like, oh. You guys couldn't see that, but it was great.
And so they're not really quite sure when his first victim happened. Some say it happened while he was in college. A boy went missing, and so then using the knowledge they had later on, they assumed it might have been him, but they never got any actual, like, hard evidence on it. The only victims that got hard evidence on, there were only 9. He confessed to 27, and the police estimated that it could be up to 200 because of the world.
That was a very estimated.
Fair? Or was it called World's Fair or World Trade Fair?
I believe it was the World's Fair, because during the World's Fair he would find people and they would need a place to stay, and obviously he had this great hotel, and he was like, you can stay here, where he would like lock them in their rooms and turn on the gas. He had gas pipes running through his house, and so that would like kill them or knock them out until he could kill them, you know.
He kind of was ingenious. Like, we shouldn't give him props, but
he really
the
was
man
smart.
really liked what he did. He put so much effort into it.
Yeah, he had trapdoors and everything to just slam the bodies down to the basement. And the way he did that was really smart, you know. No one knew the layout, because he would, you know, have a guy build this wall, fire him, have another guy build this.
What is rumored, I think, don't hold me on this though, is that he would hire an architect, and then I think after that architect was finished with what they had done, he'd either fire them or kill them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that.
Because he didn't want anyone else knowing the layout, obviously.
Yeah.
I guess he wouldn't kill, like, the architects who didn't do the murder portions, but I would understand if he would kill the ones that made his murder section of his hotel. So if the police ever did catch him, they wouldn't be able to trace it back.
Yeah, he was pretty smart on that. I believe the only one who knew the layout, like, was
Pitzel.
Ben, yeah. because him and Ben were acquainted. Oh my god.
Well, yeah, because Ben was a carpenter.
Yeah, and he was also like this big, like, raging alcoholic, but he
was
wanted big for his family. Like, he would take any job he could get, and he stumbled upon the drugstore, which was underneath the hotel. That was what Holmes did. He actually, the guy that owned the drugstore,
That's
Holton,
Ned.
yeah, he apparently mysteriously died and then gave the drugstore to Holmes. So I can infer
maybe I'm
that,
thinking of a different one.
No, I have Holton written in my notes.
Is Ned his last name?
No,
Ned Connor's who I'm thinking of, which is related to his first murder. I thought he was... No, I can't remember what Ned did, but he was working, and apparently Holmes started sleeping with his wife, Julia, and he went away.
Yeah. It's just a big thing. Like, he was very smart.
He was so
in what he
dramatic,
did.
though. Like, he did not know how to deal with his feelings.
Yeah,
When
that's
he got
probably a
bored
thing.
with
Like, when he got...
he would just kill them.
Yeah, like his wives, multiple wives.
Actually,
Well,
all
only
his
three.
wives lived. Technically, the ones that he was technically married to lived.
But he had multiple,
He
like,
would
fake
then
wives.
he would then pretend to marry one person or propose to one person, and then they were like, "Nah,
I don't want to
and
marry you," so he would
then
kill them instead of
one person
being
would
like,
want to be married, and he was like, "Oh no, too much responsibility" or whatever, and kill them.
Yeah,
but
instead
all
of just
three
saying,
of
like,
his wives
bye.
actually lived, and their names were Clara A. Lovering. I don't know. I'm married when he was 19, and then they had a son together. Myrta Belknap in 1887, and Georgiana Yoke in 1894, and I think he had a daughter with Georgiana. I can't be certain, but he had a daughter with either Myrta or Georgiana, but I can't remember.
one of the two. He was
The
very
documentary didn't tell us.
intriguing. He has done a lot of things in his lifespan. He's owned 2 drugstores, I believe it was. The first one, when he first moved, he went to Chicago, and it was around the time that he was building the hotel because he wanted it, obviously, as his killing chambers. He found this guy, became acquaintance with this guy, the Holton guy, had his drugstore, and then he mysteriously died, which obviously it can be
Who knows?
assumed
But
that
yeah,
Holmes killed
They're
him to get
pretty
the
sure.
drugstore. And so he built the hotel in the drugstore. Not in the drugstore, but around it.
Yeah.
So it was connected. So when you, like, go into the drugstore, you're in... You guys get what I'm saying.
yeah,
But-
they understand, or they should.
But he was doing that, and then he moved with Pitzel, and they were committing frauds. They were just moving around, train to city, moving around, committing all these frauds, which was originally what he was arrested for, was fraud. He wasn't incarcerated for murder, because they didn't know that he killed anyone yet. He was originally
Not yet
for
anyway.
fraud.
Maybe we should back up a bit, because we missed a very important part of that.
Which one?
About how he took the kids with him.
That was after that.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he moved, because that was after Pitzel died.
Right.
Spoiler
I remember.
alert. Later in the podcast, Pitzel dies. But that's what they did. That was just, they wanted to go around. And whenever, no, it's, when they found Pitzel, I believe
Dead?
it was Pitzel, he was dead lying on, like, in the hotel floor, not, like, the basement where he did most of the killing, or, like, the third
No,
floor.
Pitzel was burnt.
Yeah, he was.
They
Yeah, I remember, because Holmes wrote in his things. This was
he
based
was
off
very
of Holmes.
the documentary H.H.Holmes, America's First Serial Killer.
Yeah,
Is what we watched, and then we just
took notes on, like,
on that, and
Google,
then
we
we
found
did
a
some
bunch
stuff.
of stuff
But-
on search engines.
So if some of the information's wrong, sorry.
Can't trust everything you see on the internet, but we had some pretty good.
We're
I mean,
pretty
we went to
sure.
Google, so that wasn't. But it led us to some pretty good primary sources, I believe. But anywho, after he killed him, which it's assumed that he did kill him, and he
It's assumed
confessed
killed
to it.
a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the people that he confessed to. But
Yeah.
They were basing it off of what he had actually said, and one of the little insert quote things from Holmes was, I actually quite liked Pitzel or whatever, considered him to be a friend, we got along, something, he mentioned something like a brother.
Oh, yeah, because then, because he was like, maybe this wouldn't have happened if he was my brother.
Like, something like that, yeah. He
saying
compared
how
him
he was
to his brother.
Because he was like, in his mind, he was like, well, if he was my brother, maybe I wouldn't have killed him. Because I liked him so much. So maybe if he had that, like, one-step family bond, blood thing, maybe I wouldn't. Yeah. Even though in reality, he wouldn't have. Yeah. Like, with what he's done, he's killed children. I'm pretty sure family ties aren't that close. Because, like, with the Pitzel kids.
Yeah, that was a very interesting thing. Because Carrie was Benjamin Pitzel's wife, Carrie Pitzel. And he loved her dearly. Dead. Pitzel was dead. They figured out, they had some of the kids go to, like, identify the body because they didn't have the whole fingerprint system yet. So they go and they're like, this was probably my father, just laying dead, burnt. Because he was burnt so bad, they couldn't really tell facial features. My bad. It was just harder to identify bodies then, so they had multiple people looking. But those kids just looking like, yep.
Why didn't they send the wife?
I don't know. I think it was...
Was she too distraught? Did she
not
think that her kids were gonna be traumatized by seeing their father burnt dead?
I forget what the...
Yeah. The actual reasoning was, but sounds a bit odd.
Yeah. And then after that,
Holmes took a road trip.
Yeah, because Holmes wanted to support Carrie's family, Pitzel's whole family was supported by Ben. Now he's dead. What are they gonna do? Holmes was like, hey pal, I got you, family friends. He considered these people family friends, like they were all close and homey and tight until we killed them,
Or on the outside. Like, he said he thought of them as that, but who really knows?
Yeah, that was...
If that's actually how he personally felt about them.
Yeah, this isn't like an insight of his brain. It's just like what he wrote down on paper, his diary or whatever we just found. Well, we didn't find it, but you get what I mean.
Dear diary, today I killed someone. It was fun.
That's a thing. That was actually one of the...
Oh, yeah, it was... Yeah.
Killed an elderly lady and was like, it was fun. I'd probably do it again. Like, okay. That's a little...
That just happened in the newest episode of American Horror Story.
Really?
Yeah, it was in the Roanoke Nightmare is what it's called. And I read it as Chemical Romance for some reason the first time I read it. But anyway...
an American Horror Story about My Chemical Romance, bringing it back.
But it was these two nurses, and they just killed this, like, old lady. And they're killing these people because they want to spell out their favorite word, murder, by using the first letter in their name. It's kind of lame. Well, not lame, but stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It's like a game,
more murders
but...
were well thought out. Like, Holmes was a very thought out guy. Ted Bundy. Well... Kind of, sort
of.
The German murders that we mentioned in our last podcast.
They were very planned.
I'm quite interested in that whole murder case. If you couldn't tell, I'll probably, segue to it at least once every podcast. But that was extremely well thought out and planned. I don't know who the guy was. It was unsolved. It was assumed that it was the neighbor, but, unsolved murders that you can't really go back to because it was so long ago. Like this one, Oof.
And he's dead.
Yeah, well, they're all dead. It was in the 1800s. Late 1800s, but still.
Yeah, they are to be assumed that they are dead.
Yeah.
Unless, like, one of them turned into, like, a robot. We don't have that technology yet.
Yeah, no.
So, they go on the road trip, but the kids end up missing, and then the mom... is super worried.
Yeah, because the girl, one of them, what was her name?
Anne?
I know it started.
Alice.
Yeah, Alice would write letters to her mom and say, like, and at first it started out like, I miss you, I miss the whole family.
But they never were sent.
Yeah,
remember?
Because she would give them to Holmes to send.
And Holmes was
he wouldn't send them, obviously, because he was plotting something else. And then the mom, I imagine,
was super worried. Because, like, her kids just... Because at first, she was like, oh, thank you, it would be nice just for me to be by myself for a little bit. And then she assumed her kids were going to be coming back, and then they never came back. And she was like, well, this is weird. And so then she started to try and track down Holmes. I don't know how.
Which should have been very hard, especially that day and age, and they were off multiple places. But then even in the letters, Alice started getting worried. And she said one of the letters, she was like, Holmes not with us anymore, but not like a dead way, but like he's just gone.
Howard. Not Holmes. Howard. Their brother.
Oh, was that really?
Yeah, they were saying Howard's not with us anymore because Holmes killed him a while back.
Oh, that's what that was. Okay.
Oh, did you not get that? Yeah. It was Howard's not with us anymore. I don't know what's going on. I'm starting to get scared kind of thing.
Howard was their little brother.
Or to be assumed. I don't think they actually ever gave... Yeah, they did give the ages.
Yeah, I
think...
Because whenever they were introducing
Nellie was
Ben,
the
they
oldest.
introduced his whole family.
But they introduced Alice and Howard at the same time, so I don't know if they were similar.
Howard was the only one that looked, like, slightly normal. Like, no offense to Alice and the other chick, but, like, they kind of looked
pictures
crazy.
were just...
Yeah, they were just rough sketches, because they didn't have, like, ooh, photography. Well, you know what I mean.
They did
that
have
kind
photography, but not the same kind.
Yeah, like, not like how we
not
take pictures.
Not like HD.
Yeah, it wasn't like... You know what I mean. I'm sorry, I'm messing with my hair because it's a mess and I'm just...
Oh yeah, we just woke up a while ago and we decided what's a
today
better
was
way
a
to
good
wake up.
day to
I mean, we got
do some
tea,
more.
so that's good.
Yeah.
And so a former inmate, did you write that down? Because I didn't.
I know the guy. I forget his name. Hold on. That's...
Yeah.
Slick thinking. Just
Okay,
stall while
you're looking that up, I'll explain. So Howard was in jail for a while. For what was it again? That he got arrested for? Do you remember?
It was fraud at first.
Okay, yeah.
They didn't know he was a killer until...
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just couldn't remember the specifics. And this was his cellmate, this man who she's looking up the name for. And when he heard that Pitzel, the man, had died, he called to one of the police officers. Didn't call, but, shouted. And I was like, hey, I got it. Anyway, and told them that he's like, I know who did it. It was H.H. Holmes. And then the police were like, okay.
Yeah, we didn't know why he just told this guy.
He was, because Holmes was gonna give him money, I'm pretty sure, was what he wanted. He wanted money, and then Holmes didn't send it, so he was super angry and wanted revenge, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, what better way than to not frame him, but say he's a murderer, which is true. And so... Hedgepeth?
Hedgepeth. Marion Hedgepeth.
Marion Hedgepeth.
Yeah, it's on, like, the biography thing. But,
Wikipedia?
No, like, biography.
Oh, okay. But so he then he didn't, like, give them a whereabout, because he obviously didn't know. But then the police actually did start looking for Holmes, and they were successful, but not soon enough, because both Alice and Nellie had been killed as well. And he got caught.
Yeah.
And then he started freaking out, because he realized, well, not freaking out, he was a smart man.
He just realized that he didn't think it was going to happen, but then bam, everything fell apart.
And so he, obviously didn't want to die, because they had execution back then. And so he started looking at what the crowd was doing and stuff like that. And then when his wife, Georgiana, went to the stage, he cried. His ex-wife, technically. I think they got divorced. Because he thought it would gain him sympathy.
Yeah, but no one really has sympathy for a serial killer.
Nope. And so they killed him. Would you like to give the date?
You have to find it first.
It's at the very bottom, most likely.
May 7th, 1896, I believe that was.
Yeah. And they hanged him.
Yeah, he was.
And that was the end of H.H. Holmes. And so that was a basic overview of H.H. Holmes
and
himself and what he did. And now we're going to go into depth on his victims.
Yeah.
That were, once again, proved. He confessed while in jail to 27.
And it said in the documentary that we watched, but he confessed just aimlessly. He didn't really.
Yeah,
he might not have done those ones, but he's done more. And then at the very end, his last words, which I love. I'm a sucker for last words. I think it's so.
They were all wrong.
Yeah, he said something.
He said that they were all fabricated.
Yeah, that was the word. He said that they were all fabricated, and then
they hung him. Well, those weren't his actual last words, but
there was a thing. I'll probably
get into
that later, but that was so interesting. Actually, I'm gonna Google that now.
Okay, and I'll start talking about the first victim that was proven, as there were 9 that were proven. He confessed to 27. But we'll get to that later. The first one was Julia and her daughter Pearl Connor. So Holmes was a very couldn't keep it in his pants kind of guy. He always would charm people, because in that day and age he did look charming. He was attractive to the ladies. They liked how he looked. But Julia was married, and so Ned got a little angry and was like, you know what, no, bye, and left his wife and his daughter with Holmes. And Holmes...
Okay.
What?
Okay, so this has nothing to do with what he was talking about, but I'm looking up, H.H.Holmes' last words, and I found this thing, and it was like the top 11 last words of death row. John Wayne Gacy's last words were "kiss my ass." I kid you not.
I like Richard Ramirez's last words. We can have an entire episode on last words if you want, because they are very interesting.
Yeah, I love those. I'm just trying to find that, guys. Jeffrey Dahmer, get out of here.
But I don't think he asked her to marry him. No, not with her.
I don't think so.
And he learned that Julia, the mother, not the daughter, had gotten pregnant with his baby, and he was not okay with that. He didn't want a child, and so he said, hey, if we need to be together, this baby's gotta go, because then people know that you cheated on your husband with me, and we don't want that. And so she was like, okay. And on Christmas Eve, 1891, they decided that that's when it was going to be performed. And instead of actually going through with the abortion, he gave her too much chloroform and killed her. And he went to, I believe Pearl was sleeping, and did the same thing to her. And he dealt with their bodies, and it was Christmas. He said something in his diary about, and the clock struck 12, and I had finished. And so those were his first 2 victims.
That's pretty interesting. His last words, segueing back, yeah, no, that's not how that works, but, again, mentions, it doesn't say fabricated, but I only wish to say that the extent of my wrongdoing in taking human life consisted in the death of 2 women, they having died at my hands as a result of criminal operations. And then, the trapdoor was like, woo, and then he was like, oh, and then, obviously.
And then he died.
He was pronounced dead at a time. It was like a specific time. I don't remember what it was.
10:25.
Yeah, something.
10:25, I think a.m. He was pronounced dead.
Found Aileen Wuornos. However,
she's for another episode.
Yeah.
Because I really like her story. Anyway, so then the first 2 people, they were dead. They're the only person I wrote down the years for. I didn't write down
I didn't go into detail about the people. I just went into detail about him.
I did about the people, and so
I do know that they only confirmed 9 of his murders. He confessed to 27. They only confirmed 9.
Yeah, they only found
the evidence. And then 6
evidence.
Attempted murders.
Yeah, they're not.
But then even after that,
who knows?
They probably didn't get around to doing the whole castle because no one knew the layout, so they probably couldn't examine all of it. There were probably hidden rooms. Down. Well, but then it was burned down. I'm sure if it was still up today, they would still be finding, all this nice stuff. Oh, yeah, nice. But all of this new evidence and stuff, finding doors. But somebody got, mad that it was sitting there in their neighborhood after this tragic event, and they burned it down. Which
or
it
was
sucks.
Someone who was working with Holmes and didn't want to be caught.
Maybe. That's a very interesting theory.
So his next murder happened with on a woman named Emmeline Sigrand. I don't know these last names. And so once again, him being the guy that he is, he couldn't keep it in his pants, and he courted this woman and asked her to marry him, and she said, okay. And
sure, why not?
he actually seemed like he was gonna go through with it, but then she seemed like she wasn't so sure she wanted to go through with it, and decided to be like, I'm not so sure. Maybe we shouldn't get married. And he was not okay with that. He got angry and sent her into his vault to write a letter or get a letter.
I believe it was fetch a letter.
Yeah.
I remember the word fetch.
And so then he locked her in the vault and killed her.
Yep.
He...
I don't believe... I believe that was one of the, He didn't go back to get her. Like, whenever she was in the vault, he didn't go back to get her for a while. He left her in there. And I believe that after he was, like, incarcerated or whatever. Or whenever he went on his road trip.
No, that wasn't them. It was the next one. Anna Nanny. And, as in Anna, and Nanny is her nickname. Or Nanny is her nickname. And Minnie Williams. And that one... Oh, wait, no. You're right. She wasn't actually... Emmeline wasn't actually found, but she left, I think, either a handprint or a footprint in there because of the acid, and then so they found that, and so that was,
yeah, I mean, that's pretty sick and
guilty.
Twisted. He didn't just like to, like, kill the people, like, shoot them in the head or, like, slit their throats really fast, but he liked to torture them and experiment.
With some of them he did do, like, it seemed like later on he did have different ways for murdering people on how much he liked them.
Yeah, like you would figure.
He was very
for
emotion
someone,
based.
Like for Pitzel, I don't see how he would be able to set him on fire and then live with that. I feel like he would have. I mean, I knew he was gonna kill him. It tells you in the very beginning that it was one of his acquaintances, and you figure he's not gonna have an acquaintance that he's not going to kill eventually because he's telling everything to Pitzel. Well, how would he? I mean, some of them were really quick and easy, but being burned alive...
Because he was angry. That's the same thing with Emmeline. He was angry she was gonna leave him, and so he, as an extreme of his emotion, decided to...
Yeah, he was very,
the same way with
melodramatic.
Pitzel, I bet, is because he got worried and his emotions took over.
Yeah, he was very emotionally distraught. See, that is one of... I wish we had his brain to experiment on, you know, how we
That's what he said, though. Remember how in the very end he was like, I don't want people to experiment on my brain, so I want you to put me in a concrete grave.
Yeah, I wish.
And they did it.
That bothers me.
Right, but why didn't they just open it? I mean, it's probably not in there. It's probably degraded.
Yeah,
they could get his.
I mean, I get respecting wishes of people who weren't serial killers, but honestly, after he's dead, what is he gonna do? He's not gonna know.
Right, but like now. It's been so long. They could at least just get his skeleton.
I don't know if they can. And then if they do, you know, his family. What family? Didn't he kill all of his children?
No,
he didn't.
He didn't. All of his children survived.
Oh, I thought there was.
I think.
No, there was the one where the girl got pregnant. And
he gave
her the abortion and he tried to
it wasn't born yet though, so it couldn't have survived. So. Yeah. But then after Emmeline, after his anger of his marriage that didn't go through, he decided to marry Minnie Williams, who had a sister named Nanny. And he was very odd with them. He seemed to court them at first and then change, because he promised to take Nanny to Europe. I think, on like a vacation. Which, one, that's really weird. Why he decided to take the sister on a vacation and not his wife. He didn't do it.
Well,
he killed them before. Don't waste that money. And he put them in the vault and suffocated them as well.
That was a very interesting thing. And it's like, imagine the police just walking into this vault not knowing what they're gonna find. You know, they probably thought they were gonna find like embezzled money or something like that.
I don't think he left the bodies there.
Well, no, but I mean,
the bodies he burned. I'm almost certain all of his bodies were burned.
But, like,
Most
walking
of them.
into there not knowing how many people were, like, killed in
Oh, yeah. I thought you meant,
that
like,
would be
just
such
finding
a dramatic,
human remains.
like, that would... And most of the bones he didn't keep. He sold them to the... That's how he made, like, his living in the beginning, not just with the drugstore, but just selling these skeletons to the medical school, and I believe it was the one that he attended, or was it local? Because he went and graduated in the medical college thing of Michigan.
I don't know if he ever sent it to just one. He might have, but
I
assume he
sent
sent
it
it
to
to
different
multiple.
ones. Yeah, because there were a lot, and, they don't need a lot of skeletons at one college.
Imagine, like, going to a school for that at that time, and then afterwards just wondering if the skeleton that was in your classroom was an actual person, or if it was...
Yeah, and you would figure, like, the professor would give, like, props, and this skeleton was sent in by H.H.Holmes, would make him renowned, and, give him a little thanks or whatever, and the classroom would be like, oh, cool, dude, whatever.
Yeah, and then when it comes out on the newspaper, you're like,
oh, well,
okay.
Guess it was just touching a dead body.
Yeah, that would be odd, even though they still work with cadavers, so...
Well, yeah, and you're a medical student, you're going to... And that was what H.H. Holmes loved. He loved working on cadavers, which freaks me out. I can't even...
And so...
It reminds me of that, the part on Fast Times at Ridgemont High where they went to, like, their little field trip or whatever. I believe it was when they went on their field trip, and there was, like, a dead autopsy body thing that they were looking at. Yeah, if you've ever seen that movie, you know what I'm talking about, but, like, that's kind of what it reminds me of, because the teacher was all, like, weird and stuff, and, you had some of the girls throwing up, and then I think it was Spicoli that was like, dude, that's cool. You would figure that would be Spicoli.
It reminds me of, Psych? Is that what it's called? It was that, crime show. I think it might just be called Psych, and they had a musical episode, and there was a coroner, or mortician, I'm not sure what he was, who sang about a dead body, and it was really funny. Anyway, back to H.H. Holmes.
What a guy.
His fourth murder was on Mr. Benjamin Pitzel. As we already said, he was a carpenter who got hired. Holmes told him a lot. Holmes got worried that he was going to tell somebody in his alcoholic state and decided to kill him.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that
Pitzel guy. And he bound him, his hands and legs, and burnt him alive. And then cut up his body.
That'd be so harsh. I mean, you did have, like, an emotional... He was an acquaintance with him, even as he was saying, Comparing him like a brother where you wouldn't do that.
I don't think he was comparing him to a brother. I think he was saying, if he was my brother, I might not have killed him. But he wasn't my brother, so I killed him.
It's still so insane.
He was very
we don't know how
based.
his mind worked. That's why I wish we had his brain, the new stuff
but
coming out in psychology.
Brain, we might not, even if we had his brain, we might not be able to tell because it's based on chemicals and it might be too old for that.
Yeah. That's just so crazy.
And so since we talked about Benjamin Pitzel already quite a lot, let's go on to his children. Nellie, Alice, and Howard Pitzel, who H.H. Holmes took with him on a trip after Benjamin had died. They were going all over the place. There was never a specific...
Yeah, that's why, part of the reason why...
Well, excuse you. Oh, the one thing finished. Cool. Anyway.
Yeah, we're
doing multiple stuff.
Because we can't meet, like, every week or every couple weeks to do this, so we're pre-recording a lot, just so we have it there to do. We're busy, very little children.
So his children were Nellie, Alice, and Howard Pitzel. Don't know if I already said that. But, and that's how their ages went. Obviously, oldest to youngest. And so, H.H. Holmes took them on the trip, I think, by train. They were just on train going places. That's how it was in the documentary. That might not be true, but...
Yeah, and we don't know what source the documentaries took for and everything.
And we don't know really much about the trip itself.
They just went around, got the kids off of Carrie's back, but of course Carrie was worried because he didn't say specifically where he's going to be. It was just like, it's a road trip, it's good for the kids. Or when he was going
to come back.
Yeah, that was the thing.
That was the main thing that bothered her, was that he didn't
He didn't really care that, you know, a mother is missing her children. He was just like, oh, victims, cool.
But the thing with that is, so he killed Howard first. He strangled and burned him, and then buried him. I don't know, I can't remember where, but I'm pretty sure it was still in the United States. And then with the two girls, Nellie and Alice, he put them in a trunk in Ontario. I think it was Ontario.
They mentioned something.
I'm pretty sure it was in Canada, but I can't remember where. It might be Toronto. I don't know.
They mentioned something about Canada.
Yeah, and it was in Canada, and it was in a house. And so he put them in a trunk and then pumped poisonous gas into it, and they died, obviously. And he dealt with their bodies. He stripped them out of their clothes, which is something that I don't understand why he did, because there wasn't any sexual acts performed or anything like that we know of.
Yeah, I mean, there might have been, but he's never done that before.
He didn't say anything about it, though, like in his diary.
Yeah, you would figure he would say.
Yeah, he just undressed them and buried them. I don't know, he didn't say why, but he mentioned, like, how the only thing touching them was, like, the dirt. And that was weird. But what I wanted to point out is the two different ways that he killed the kids. Because he poisoned Nellie and Alice, but he strangled and burned Howard, which those are two different things. And he seemed to like Nellie and Alice.
Yeah, so that would be a more peaceful...
Yeah, like, it's obviously not good. It's still death, but...
Yeah, see, that's another way you can, like, decipher, like, if he... you know, at least liked you a little bit and killed you, or if he, like, just hated you, or just got really pissed off at you and wanted to kill you. He was mad at Ben. Poor Ben. And he killed, Ben, similar to how he killed Howard, you know, like a father and son, like, they were both burned. I mean, Ben was bound, and then he was just slaughtered.
Ben was burned alive, while Howard was strangled and then burned to get rid of the evidence.
Which is pretty smart for, like, back then. I mean, now we would know.
He was very smart.
He just kind of had all these little tactics, and he was like, well, this is how he... And you would figure he was studying that. He was big on chemistry, so obviously that's how he got the poisons and all that. And then anatomy, that's how he knew, you know, this gets rid of this body, you know, this is how you clean and scrape the bones and stuff. He was just very intelligent. That's...
But... Oh, I can't remember who it is, but I don't think he cleaned the bones. I'm pretty sure he sent them off to people, and they would clean it, because one of them kept the skeletons. They refused to give it back, and then that is one of the evidence. It didn't say it on that, but I was reading an article about H.H.Holmes, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know why they had the skeleton, whether it was because they were making it into a skeleton, like a prop, which that's probably what it was.
Yeah, that's probably why they sent it there. Because some, like, if you're sending it out, you have to have it, like, examined and stuff to just make sure it's or whatever. But
and he kept it, and so they used that also as a evidence later on in the police case.
Which it's a pretty fascinating case, honestly. It really,
especially for being the first, like, serial killer in America.
Like, he wasn't really looking up to anyone. I mean, Jack the Ripper was big around that time, but that was in England.
Poe, like,
yeah,
that was
that's
his fascinating.
Big thing. That is fascinating because Edgar never actually killed anyone.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about it, but like Pit and the Pendulum.
He was just very, you know, clinically depressed.
Yeah, that was
Howard. Yeah, Howard. Well, yeah, Henry Howard, but he was just, you know, whatever.
He definitely had some mental illnesses.
Yeah. He was...
Most of them do.
They said that he was, like, bullied as a kid, but he wasn't, like, the most picked-on kid. He wasn't, like...
They were jealous of him.
He was very smart, too, in school. So he wasn't very picked on. It wasn't, like, there was something in his childhood that really, like...
He got married, so that's something.
Yeah, and they say he was very attractive. All the ladies were swooned by him. He was very suave.
No Richard Ramirez, though.
Yeah, well... How can you be Richard Ramirez without that mustache?
That mustache
Holmes' mustache was really cool looking. Like, I'm not trying to.
It looks like he put a curler in it every night because it looks like it goes like over, and not.
I don't know how they styled their mustaches back then.
I don't know. It was an odd time.
Yeah, but what a guy.
But So that's the curious case of H.H. Holmes.
What about?
And the most recent use of him in fiction is his character being used in American Horror Story Hotel. And that entire season was basically based around H.H. Holmes's murder castle. And H.H. Holmes himself was in it, but he wasn't named H.H. Holmes, which I don't understand, because later on when the other killers arrive, they use all their names. But H.H. Holmes' character is the only one that didn't use the same name. Instead, his name was Mr. March. James March. And played by Evan Peters.
Which explains why she's obsessed with it.
I love Evan Peters. I love how he looks. Curly hair is like...
As we're looking at his face on her
Oh yeah,
wall.
I have a Murder House poster of Tate, which is also a reference to a killer. More like killers.
Well, that's what you're gonna get with American Horror Story.
Yeah,
a lot of references.
Like all of it is just a bunch of references, and whether it be to a specific type of case or just an in general, like Freak Show was an in general. Like they took what is it? Not experience, but when you are inspiration. That's what I was thinking of. They took inspiration from like actual Freak Show workers, like Jimmy's character, the guy who the lobster hands one.
Yeah.
They took it like inspiration from a real guy, but because it was played by Evan Peters, they still wanted him to be attractive because they know that some girls are just watching it because of that. Because like the real lobster man or whatever, his nickname was not attractive at all. He was very short and stout, unlike Evan Peters. That's why I think I'm so attracted to Richard Ramirez as appearance-wise. Not what he did, but appearance-wise. Tall, curly hair. Looks like the devil.
Yep, that's her.
So, I think we're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have any more little specifics, and we already talked about him dying and all that.
So, bye-bye.
See you later.
Yeah, alligator.